Welcome to Unlock CX, the podcast where we explore innovating customer engagement, brought to you by Anywhere 365. We'll be talking with industry experts about great strategies that create memorable customer experiences. And now, let's unlock this episode. Welcome to this first episode of Unlock CX. We're here with a special guest for our first episode. He's an analyst, he's a CX enthusiast, and a tech thought leader. We're very happy to have him here. Evan Kirstel, welcome.
Good to be here.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk to you about, in last January, you had a chat with our CEO, with Enrico Karsten. I'm not sure if you remember the topic. You were talking about CSPs rethinking and empowering radical CX improvements. And so obviously, like, you were the interviewer back then, and so Enrico got a lot to explain how we see that. But I was wondering, what's your take on the role of technology in general and the providers of the technology in improving customer engagement?
Well, ironically, it's all about AI. So you talked first about humanizing technology, and what the irony is that we're going to use technology, AI, and particularly the excitement with ChatGPT right now, to humanize CX, which is a little ironic. But after all, these large language models are based on massive amounts of human content, human writing. And so it only makes sense that it will have the opportunity to humanize the interactions with chatbots, and make them more human-like, perhaps more empathetic, more understanding, and more interactive and human in every way imaginable, except, of course, they're bots. So I think that is the revolution that awaits us with AI.
And you're saying, well, we have to, of course, make them more human. I actually read one of the articles that you had where I learned that in 1966 there was the first chatbot introduced, which is called Elize. I think my parents named me after that chatbot. No, but all jokes.
Elize.
Yeah, true. No, what I was wondering, because you're talking about, humanizing the chatbots, what do you think, or what do you see how we could do that?
Well, I think it's about putting early experiences and putting out projects that test the waters, and all this technology we have is iterative. So it requires, a feedback loop with real humans. It requires trials. It requires testing the waters, trying it with employees and early adopter customers. So, the thing with ChatGPT is it will get better. There's one thing we know: whatever it is and whatever it will be in 4 or 5 years will not be like it is today. So the time is now to experiment and to use these applications in different niches and different use cases that might make sense. So that doesn't mean mass rollout and scaling it up to every user and every application, but finding those, little hidden gems, those little hidden use cases that, have the opportunity to delight and thrill, customers and users. And I think that's what's happening with OpenAI and ChatGPT. They're rolling out, with Snap, where chatbots can write recommendations or write a haiku for friends in seconds and add some joy and delight to your Snap communications. Or there's a company called Quizlet who'll be using the API to basically do drills and vocabulary learning and multiple choice and testing as sort of a fully adaptive AI tutor. So there are all of these really interesting use cases. And the question is, CX, what can the developers, what can we dream up? What could we imagine that we couldn't do before, but we can do now with these large language models?
Yeah. So would you say that there's like a new era of AI? So I mean, I think that we've all seen like chatbots in the past few years. Like many companies were using
Yeah,
chatbots,
pretty
but like
bad, pretty bad
I've yeah,
generally.
exactly. I was going to say like I don't think that I've ever experienced like a great chatbot. But do you think that like things like ChatGPT, OpenAI will really break that open?
Yeah, I really think so. And again, it's not one company. There's, every big tech company is working on large language models and is building these huge data sets and using all the new approaches that are being used, supervised learning and all, you got on and on and on. But yeah, we've hit a kind of escape velocity on AI, and where it goes is just up to now the developers and the uh, the tinkerers and the creators to come up with ways to deploy it. And these large language models are fundamentally different from what we had before. It's not just an evolution, but the amount of data that goes into the models is so vast that we really don't even understand exactly how they work. Like the data scientists will tell you, like they know at a high level and statistically in the models and the code, but how they produce these results is kind of stunning and also scary because they can easily get out of control, as we've seen in a few examples.
Yeah, I think that we have, yeah. Yeah, and so would you say that so Microsoft purchased OpenAI, right? So they took a big stake there. Um, how do you feel about like those kind of acquisitions where like AI well seems to be like not just integrated in communication, but in like more in process automation and that kind of thing? Is that like
Yeah, into the products. Like,
yeah
it's kind of like, well, why do I need to call customer service if I have a co-pilot,
yeah exactly
in my TV or on my phone or in my banking app that can guide me
right
through problems or issues? And that's new. I mean, it's not just about contacting customer service or, chatbots were a way to offload calls to an agent and all that stuff will happen. But it's more like if you can embed intelligence in every device and app and service, maybe I don't need to call customer service. And then the flip side is, when I need help, it's right there. It's watching what I'm doing. It's learning. It's telling me, hey, that you can't use Excel that way. You have to use this. You have to do this. Or if I'm in a Word document, I don't know how to, share a document with someone or having, it sort of is watching me and teaching me as I
yeah
go.
Okay.
So that's kind of, for me, the revolution more than just another chatbot or another contact center tool.
And then if we go a bit into the more personal side, right? I'm sorry if we go there, but I was just wanted to be a bit cheeky because I'm quite a noob, right? I'm not really long in the UC. I've been working a longer time in telco, but I was wondering is more to the personal side as you were talking. Well, as a customer. Just before. So, what actually do you maybe have an example of a time when you had like really good customer experience and what made it special, like where you really felt engaged as a customer?
Yeah, pretty much every interaction with Apple, that I have is an example of a great customer interaction. Whether I walk into the store, they know me as a customer, they know why I'm there. It's very seamless. There's no friction. If it's a remote support, they use iMessage and very rich kind of communications back and forth. And if there's a problem, the whole, like you say, workflow is very streamlined. And they've, invested billions in that whole architecture, that whole workflow, including the back office staff to equip them in the field with the best technology and point of sale and tools. Really is amazing, even if you have really tough issues with your iPhone or your Mac or so forth. And it's really a joy. Now the question is, how could every other company besides Apple try to implement that kind of experience? And they don't have billions to spend on the most advanced tech and and the best people in the industry? So that I think is the big question.
That's the $1 million question, I guess.
Or the $1 billion.
Yeah.
Even the retail. I mean, retail. We kind of us in tech, we sort of retail is dead or dying. It's not the case at all. I mean, most consumers still go to the retail. They want to explore the point of sale. They want to go into a store. They want to talk to someone, and that's where a lot of the consumer experience kind of falls down. Is that retail experience, except in an Apple store where you can pay anywhere, you can have hands-on with products, you can get easy help through the Genius Bar. I mean, all of this is one of the reasons Apple is the trillion-dollar company it is.
Yeah, and what I hear you say again is also the human touch, right? And the Genie Bar was also something that was super innovative. Once they introduced that, like you could go somewhere and they would actually make it while you were standing there. You didn't need to hand it in for a while. And again, it's I think also a bit of that human touch that's still in that customer engagement. So
yeah, no disrespect to our telco friends, and I know I worked in telecom for 30 years, and I don't know that a telco has a Genius Bar. If anything, it might be. I won't disrespect them, but it's the opposite of that experience. If you ever have a router problem or a Wi-Fi or broadband problem, we've all experienced the challenges of getting support and service and getting on-site tech support. It's kind of a nightmare, although it's gotten better, to be fair, over the last number of years. I think at least here in the US, a lot of the providers have woken up to that need for better CX.
In the Netherlands, actually, some of the providers are now opening stores, so actual stores that you can walk in if you have those problems, where you again get then the connection with the retail as well. So
right. The challenge is, do they connect the front office and the back office? Do they know who you are as a customer?
Yeah.
Or what kills me though is these contact centers with the blind transfers and the multiple entering of account information, and it really is like knowing your customer. I mean, and telcos should be in a position to know their customers better than anyone, but sadly that doesn't turn out to be the case in many times.
Right. So would you say that like so I know that a lot of companies use like really great things as kind of standalone experiences where like I think that I've heard you say in the talk with Enrico as well, like that like building an ecosystem of communication is key, because you'll have like either way, like no matter what kind of endpoint you use, like if it's like voice or chatbot or whatever, but if you integrate it into your data and like everything that you know of your customer, that really makes the difference. So it's not really the channel that makes a difference, but like the integration into the full ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think it's about empowering that customer service agent. Like so many agents are siloed. They don't have access to a lot of the back office systems. They're not empowered to make decisions in many cases, and they don't have the coaching. Talk about AI. I mean, you could see AI coaching. Where it whisper in the agent's ear and provide them advice or guidance or counseling or guidance or answers
like real-time sentiment analysis, that kind of stuff.
Sentiment analysis. There's so much that we can do to empower people through technology beyond just the old picking up the phone and saying hello, which is where a lot of contact centers are stuck these days.
So if you would, let's say you're the CX leader at this big enterprise, let's say Walmart, like what would be your go-to move to, like the first thing that you would do now to like really make a dent in innovating customer engagement?
Well, I think it's about people, first of all. Like you got to train, equip, and direct your support employees, your agents, your frontline staff. So much of it just comes down to the people side, and that's an investment in people. And then again, there's process. I mean, if you work for a big company, I have at Oracle and Intel and others, there's just a lot of bureaucracy on the back office. We could use a lot more automation and RPA and get people helping customers and away from all of the bureaucracy that big companies have to deal with day to day. And so, what would I do? I would do a lot of what they're doing. Give every employee an iPhone with real-time access to everything anywhere. Inventory, stock, order status. A lot of airlines are doing that. They're saying, okay, we're just going to give you a tablet, and you're going to have all the tools in your hand so you can help customers where it matters, right? Before the flight or during or after the flight. And a lot of the, even in Apple, all the employees have a point of sale device in their hand. There's no queuing, checkout or any of these things. So, equipping employees with the best tech that's really also easy to use and very usable, so that when they're, if you're an employee and you're checking in for the day, or you're checking out, or you're doing scheduling, it looks like something like more like Facebook, or more like WhatsApp, and not some obscure application
or five of those different applications.
Yeah.
Like where you have to go.
A lot of that. If you ever heard the computers are down, I can't do this or I can't do that. And, a lot of companies have not invested enough in technology. Just look at Southwest, the big airline here, that had pretty much a meltdown of their crew scheduling software that was decades old. So we like to, as techies, we like to talk about all this tech, but the actual adoption is lagging in many cases, because it's a big expense. It's expense in people and process and CapEx, and people are cutting back, particularly this year and last year, and trying to reduce expenses. So you really have to make a case for any technology these days.
So I totally resonate as well with the story that you were telling, because I used to work at a big elevator company, and I never knew that there was this process where the engineers with one tablet in their hand could say, okay, this is wrong at the elevator. Actually, you would like to be, I think, one step ahead of that the elevator knows it itself what's wrong with it. But okay, the engineer found out. Then they order, and then the next day it was in their cars delivered, the tools that they needed to use and to fix the elevator again. And I thought that was so wow, I had no idea of this, that it existed, and it makes everyone's life more easy. And it's a one application system where they could also log in at their hours, which disturbances were there, where did they need to go. I thought that was such a nice thing to see, and it was such a new thing for me as well. But I think, for me personally, it would need to start with that one thing, okay, that the elevator knows itself actually what's wrong, that then the triggers are coming.
Right. So
I love that story, and there's so many industries we could learn from. There's a company, Airbus is one example. They actually monitor operations and integrity of all the parts and the systems real time, and report real time during the flight. So if there's an anomaly or a repair that's needed, or something is not functioning, it gets communicated in real time. The plane lands, it's addressed and fixed, and it's ready to go. And that's sort of the world in which we need to live now. Imagine if I could call my bank, and they knew exactly what my problem was, why I was calling, and said, hey, we understand there's an issue. We saw this issue. Just to let you know, we're working on it. I mean, these sort of predictive approach to CX, a proactive approach to CX, is something that's really, really needed.
So then you actually would want them to know before you do, right? That there's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's definitely doable now with all the APIs and the automation that's available. The phone company should know if my service is down, and they do. Now, how do you deal with that from a customer perspective?
Yeah. I think that that makes sense. So would you say that we're like very far away from integrating IoT into customer engagements? Or like, I can't remember that I've seen a lot of real life use case. I mean, I can come up with use cases, but I haven't seen many of them. I know that for example, you know a lot about health tech as well. Like I know that there's some use cases there where you use IoT to enable, let's say patient engagement or.
Yeah, no, that's everywhere. I mean, patient monitoring, the ability for patients to get out of the hospital. Like the hospital, if you ever had to stay there, is like the worst place to be. You want to get out of there as soon as you can. And with this remote patient monitoring technology, either wearables or blood pressure cuffs or sensors or heart for your heart or lungs, whatever it may be, you can rest at home and recover at home while being under the supervision of a doctor or facility. And it's a win-win for the patient who doesn't want to be in the hospital, a win-win for the provider who lowers the cost of care, and it's a win for the doctor who can, keep tabs on a particular patient in real time through wireless and Bluetooth and all these wearable devices now. So it's going through, affect every industry, and some are going to benefit a lot more than others, like healthcare.
Right.
And in the beginning of the conversation, we were actually talking about COVID coming back from the pandemic. And I think COVID also changed a lot in the has changed a lot in the customer engagement field. And I was wondering, what do you think is like the most, if you look back now, the 3 years have gone, like what do you think is like the biggest impact that COVID has had on customer engagement?
Well, there's some people who said we've gotten 10 years of digital transformation in 2 years of effort. So there was a huge leap forward in tech adoption and deployment and acceptance, and we're comfortable doing things like video, not just for podcasting, but all kinds of video use cases like telehealth, telemedicine, and so that's been great. I mean, we've seen a big adoption in things that we thought might take another 5 or 10 years to get consumer adoption. And seen the surge in investment in home broadband and 5G and home rollout of broadband everywhere. So we've seen some great steps forward on the tech adoption side. And yet there's still a big digital divide to close. There's still a big gap in equity between those who have the greatest tools and broadband and apps and services and devices, and those who don't, socioeconomically. So there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I agree. Right. I'd like to thank you so much, Evan, for coming on the show. We really loved talking with you. It was an honor. I have one more question for you before we end. If we are going to decide, or when we're deciding on our the next guest that we really need to talk to on the show, who would you recommend?
Yeah, I'd say bring Dave Michaels on. He's fun, and he can be really interesting. A lot more insider depth knowledge on the CX space. And I'll give you a warning, he's a bit of curmudgeon, and if you're listening, so you'll have to take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, invite Dave on, and there's so many more beyond that. I'd be happy to make some suggestions. One question for you: we're still in the doldrums of winter here in Boston. When's the best time to come to Amsterdam? Is there like a big festival in the spring or early summer, or is there like boating festival or tulip festival or
I'm pretty sure that they are.
Is that just every day in Amsterdam?
No, I see Elize smiling, so maybe she knows the answer.
Yes, April, because then you have two things. April. You have all the tulips. So there's a lot to see then for in terms of flowers, but we also have King's Day. So then all the cities actually in the Netherlands are orange. Because we celebrate and it's on the 27th of April. So you're always invited, and we're happy to, show you around then as well.
Yeah.
Great. No, I've never been over for King's Day. That sounds really fun.
It is.
Cool. Yeah, I actually know
buy
that.
Some orange though. I don't have enough orange. I don't have anything orange, so I have to go.
There will be plenty. There will be plenty. Don't worry.
All right. Look forward to it. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Bye. That's a wrap for this episode of Unlock CX, brought to you by Anywhere 365. Did you enjoy it? Leave us a review and share your comments. Oh, and be sure to subscribe as we continue to explore customer engagement strategies that unlock memorable experiences.